Hello and welcome to today's video. We will be discussing prompts. We'll be going over the different prompts that you could create, the different types, and most importantly how to embed them into filters and into reports. It's hard to talk about prompts without talking about filters, and frankly prompts in MicroStrategy are a little bit confusing just because the way they interact with filters and reports. So I'm not going to talk about every way to use prompts and embed prompts, but I'm going to talk about the most common ways to use them and embed them into filters and reports. The first thing is creating prompts. Let's just use the general folder area for our work. Let's just go to the prompts area. Actually, let's not confuse it with the pre-built prompts in the tutorial, so let's just go to a different area and build our work. Okay, this is a good area. So the first thing is creating a prompt. Right click, new, and prompt. Okay, you'll notice there's 4 types of prompts, and the definition prompt has 4 different ways to define it. We'll start with the top to the bottom. So let's go from filter definition prompt, choose from all attributes in a hierarchy. This is kind of one of the simplest ones. Let's just keep it and see how that works. So either allow you to list all hierarchies in your schema to select from. Remember, your architect would have created for you a bunch of hierarchies. Actually, yeah, and when you're in the prompt editor, you can actually browse. Like I just tried to do this, and it gave me an error. But let me cancel this, and let me show you the hierarchies. Hierarchies are in the schema. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 hierarchies. Okay. So let me go ahead back and rebuild my prompt. So prompt, hierarchies, you have the option of listing all or choose a hierarchy. You choose one, or the results of a search object. This comes in handy when you have something unique, like let's say you have a bunch of metrics with a coded prefix or postfix, such as, I don't know, national, let's say, or regional or something like that, and you create a search object on those. You can add your search object right here, and your prompt will be using the results of that search to prompt you on. You can create a list of predefined. Again, you only have 4. It's very simple. So the search or these are only going to give you an option to choose from maybe all or part of the 4, and the display and the form that you want to distribute. Remember, every attribute has a form, and it has the ability to show you all the forms, the browse form, the report display forms. Every attribute has a browse form, a report display form. Typically we keep both, but sometimes you don't want to show the ID, you want to show something else, like the report display form that might have the description, the browse might have ID and description, depending on your attribute design. Okay, so let's keep things simple, and let's just go choosing the list of all, no restrictions. Okay, again, you can customize the text that you want up here. You can customize how many selections are about, and the minimum and maximum, and whether it's required or not, and so you can do some web customization. You could look into that yourself. It's really nothing complicated. So let's just keep this simple. Do you need a default answer? Maybe. Let's just add time as our default. Okay, and let me drag it here, or sometimes it doesn't let me drag. Okay, so here we go. The year, let's just say ID is 2009. Okay, so I'm making that my default. I don't know why I chose it, but let's just use that as a default. Okay, it really doesn't make sense sometimes when you're doing all hierarchies and then one default is the year, but let's just keep that for simplicity, and let's save it as list all hierarchies default year equals 2009. Okay. All right. And let's create a report that uses that. So I'm create a new report. Blank. I'm just going to put something on it like, let's see, what should we use? Let's just do something from the time hierarchy since we're using the year. Let's just add month. Okay, and I'm going to keep it simple and I'm going to list all the hierarchies. Here we go. I'm going to save this. I'm just going to call it my test prompt. Alrighty. So here it is. I'm double click it, just run it, see what the prompt does. So the prompt shows us all the hierarchies and shows us our default answer. You want to keep the default, you hit next. You want to remove the default, you can drag it over here. Or you can create something else. So let's put on year. And here it gives you total freedom to qualify anything you want. I'm going to do 2009. You could also, if you notice, double click and add another, and month. In this case, the month, let's say ID, and 2009, let's do 02 February. Okay. So this is an and. You could double click the and it'll become an or. Click it or not. Click it and not. Depends on the logic you want. So if it's an intersection, you can do the and or not and not. This comes in very handy. Okay. So let's just keep it that standard is and, unless your architect modifies the standard to be an or, but typically all of them are set to and. Okay, so let's keep that and finish. Obviously February 2009 is what we expected. Let's look at the SQL. Okay. Alright, so here I want you to look at this and see how MicroStrategy took the first part of the prompt and the second part of the prompt and placed them in the where clause. It's sort of like we're creating a filter, but the value is adjusted at runtime. Okay, and again, we used the hierarchy prompt for this. I'm going to close this, and notice I want to show you one more thing before I create the next prompt. Let's say I double click to edit it. Once I designated a prompt to be a hierarchy prompt, I cannot edit it and change it to a value prompt or a level prompt or something else. That's it. Once you create it as one type, you can modify it. Here we chose all hierarchies. You can choose something else. You can modify the text, etc. But you cannot change the type of the prompt. And how do you know the type of the prompt? If you look here, you will notice that the type, it says expression prompt, which was the first type, or it'll say object prompt or value or level prompt. So the type doesn't change. You can only modify inside the prompt. So if you want to create a different type of prompt, you will have to create a new prompt. So now let's qualify an attribute, which is the most common type of prompts you will encounter. You want to choose an attribute. Let's choose year. Okay? Or you can use a result of a search object or a predefined list. Let's just keep the year and let's show all forms. Okay? And similar, you can maximum, minimum number of qualifications, maximum number of qualifications, and maximum number of elements per selection. Let's do 1, prompt answer required or not, etc. So let me show you what this means. Let's put 2. Okay, and I'm going to say here it calls it qualification year. I'm going to use the same name. It's also an expression prompt, but it's a different kind of expression prompt, so when I try to edit it, I can't change it to a hierarchy prompt, for instance. It is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to go here and edit my test report, drag the old one off, and I'm going to drag the new one in. You don't have to use the dragging. You can go through the object browser and find them. but I find it more convenient to just drag and drop things. It makes developing a little bit faster. Alright, so here it is. Let's run it and see what happens. Okay. So the year now is my default or my attribute that I'm choosing on or filtering on. And notice it's grayed out, so I can't just go and change it to month anymore. I'm committed to this attribute because the filter was designed, or the prompt was designed using this. However, I can choose the form that I want to filter on, and I can choose to customize it even, and I can choose whether it's exactly less than or greater than. Let's change greater than, and here we go, 2009. So depending on your data, and finish. So all the data that I have in my report that was greater than 2009 will show up. So I had 2 years of data in the tutorial, and there they are. Look at the SQL. It's not going to be much different than the previous one. Here you go. It's in the where clause again. Very straightforward, very simple. Alright, I'm going to close this. And let's look at this one more time, the year. If I didn't want to choose an attribute here, I can do a predefined. And the predefined lets you do this. So I can do year, month. Okay? Keep everything the same, finish. And now look what happens. I probably didn't save it, so let me edit it one more time. Yep, I didn't save it. So I'm going to put my qualification, there it is. Okay, just trying to move the boxes out of the way. Alright, so here's the qualification by year. It's no more actually by year, it's by month and year now. Save and close, and run. So now, it's a little bit different than previously. Instead of defaulting to year, it's given us the choice between year and month. So you first have to select this, and then you do everything else the same way you were doing it before. Okay? So you can add one attribute or multiple attribute or the results of a search. Remember that search? Let's do a quick search. So let's say I want to create a search object. So I do search, and I want it to search in my metrics, okay, for anything named month. Let's see. Find now. Okay. Well, since we're not doing metrics now, let me do the attributes first. Let's see. Schema objects, attributes. Okay. Find now. So I have 2 month attributes. I'm going to save this. Look at here. Save as month attribute search. Okay. I'm saving it in the same folders that we're creating everything in. There it is. And now I can go to my here. Instead of using predefined, I'm going to use the result. New. I'm sorry. Result. I'm going to search. We saved our stuff in the filters folder. There it is. Select it. Finish. Now look what happens when I run the report. Alright. What is it going to let us choose from? The result of the search. Month and month of year. So it's a little bit different now. We're using the result, but it's operating the exact same way. Again, it's operating the exact same way. And you can do it by element, by adding them, or by ID. Typically I use the ID because I'm familiar with my data, but if you're not, you just do the elements and you add. Okay? It's very simple, very straightforward, and the SQL will appear to be the same. Alright, so let's cover another prompt. So we did all in hierarchy, qualifying on an attribute. Attribute element list is very popular, as much as the first one. Actually, it might actually be more popular than the first one, because this one you're setting the attribute all, or you can filter, and this is very useful. Sometimes you want to add a custom filter, so you say instead of list all years, you can put another filter, say greater than 2005 or something. I don't think we have any yeah, we don't have any filters that I can use that are pre-built. Okay, so I'm going to ignore this step for now. We'll come back and so you can add a filter that limits the amount of data returned, okay? Or you can use a predefined list, so it actually shows you all the years they have, all the data values. Remember, these are the data values in your database. It's not MicroStrategy data. This is database data. Your data warehouse has to have it. You can do like this, select a few, and you can actually arrange them, order them, etc. So you have a predefined list, or all, or filtered. Let's just use the all. These will stay here, but they're actually grayed out because I'm using the list and finish and elements of year. That's fine. So I'm going to use that new elements of year. And notice now the result in the SQL. We're going to talk about that. It's important to keep looking at your SQL while you're doing things, because things get manipulated by the SQL. And there you go. Let's choose 1 year. There it is. All the months of that year and the SQL. So now it is doing the in part. Okay? Remember when we were doing the other stuff, it was doing the exactly, etc. But now because I'm selecting an element, I'm not saying the value is exactly 2008. I'm picking, and MicroStrategy translates that to using where the attribute is in a list. In this case, I only chose one. Okay? So it starts looking a little bit different when you start using different prompts, but it's doing the same thing. This could have been the year ID equals 2008, and it would have worked. It just, MicroStrategy translates the prompt of selecting from an attribute element list into an in, because the in operates on a list, whether it's one or many. In this case, it happened to be one, so there was an alternative. But if it was more, then there isn't, right? Alright, so that covers, I guess, 3. And trying to move fast here because qualifying a metric, very simple. You choose a metric. Let's choose a sales metric like profit, and we'll say the next here, similar things. Let's do maximum number of qualification is 1, and finish. Qualification on profit. Okay, and I'm going to use this, edit. So obviously month and profit doesn't make sense to necessarily, unless you're looking at your monthly profits, for instance, overall the whole company. So let's just keep that for demo purposes. If it returns nothing, I'll modify it. So here's our profit. Notice this now looks different. That one had a box, the attribute, because it's an attribute, and this one is a metric, so it has that ruler behind the filter when you add it. Okay, so I'm going to run this. First of all is our first prompt, month or month year, ID is greater than, let's just say greater than 0, which is all of them, right? So I'm just doing this as a dummy. And here, where profit, it's telling us, do you want to change the output level? If you don't change it, it'll be the template level or the report level, which is your standard. Sometimes you want to modify the level while you're doing this. It's tricky. You have to know what you're doing before you modify the level. Do you want it on the value or the rank or the percent of the metric? So those are 3 options that come out of the box. You can use the value or the rank. The rank and percent, if you choose them, it'll in the SQL it'll show you the metric value, and it'll do the rank or percent in the analytical engine, not in the SQL. So you don't see them in the SQL when you choose these 2 but you always see the metric value in this equal every time. And the operator, do you want to do similar thing exactly, etc. Let's say greater than 100. Since I'm not familiar with the values, I'm just going to keep it simple. Okay, and finish. Alright, so it returned all the months where the profit was greater than. Now the thing is, if there's no relationship between time and profit, it's going to drop it. So let's see what that does. It didn't. It put it in a halving clause. It just was kind enough to not ignore it completely, because the month category sales has a relationship between month or time and profit, so it enabled this filter. So time and profit can work together, and here's the filter, the greater than 100, the one I answered, and this was the dummy one where I said greater than 0. Okay, instead of adding it in the where clause, it added it in the halving clause. I'm not going to go into the engine, why it's doing a halving, why is it not doing it in the where, but let's just say that you could see it both ways, in the where or the halving, depending on what other operations are happening on your report. If you're interested in knowing how these are generated, just go and look for the engine specialist documentation. You'll start learning more about how MicroStrategy chooses where to place some of these filters. Okay, but for this tutorial purposes, that'll be enough. And I'm going to brush quickly on the next two. The object prompt is allowing you to add a list of objects. So this is more flexibility. This is providing more flexibility. So I could do something like a list of metrics, okay, and say, and at runtime the user can choose some of these metrics. This prompt would be placed on the template, not in the filter area. Let me show you what I mean. I'd rather show you so we remove any ambiguity. So there's the predefined list of objects, and here's my report, and I'm going to edit it. So obviously it doesn't make sense to filter by a list of metrics. It really doesn't. What you're trying to do here is add this to the template. Okay, so notice here, now we have a metric based on the result of the prompt. Okay, remember I said embedding prompts can be done in multiple ways, but for a list of objects, this is a good way of using it. For a list of attributes or a list of metrics, save and close, and I'm going to run my report. Here it is, the list. Let's say I chose a few of them, and the year, let's just say the year or the month. Sorry, it's called year because I saved it when I named it year, and then I modified it to month, so hopefully that's not too confusing. And the month is 2008-01, let's say January, and let's run this and see what happens. Okay, we got no data, so I'm not really sure why, but the data is not part of this training, I guess. Here's the month, here's the order, here's the filter, the joining, and I guess there's not enough data in the order detail for that month. I can always reprompt. Actually, for simplicity, since I'm not familiar, I will take the month prompt off and just run it with no time limitation to guarantee some data. So it's doing all that number crunching here, and there we go. For all the months, it's showing us all the metrics that we selected. So it's runtime, you determine what gets displayed. That's pretty neat to have. And I want to show you one more thing. Let me remove these and let me add something else. Here's where it gives you flexibility. Let's just do something with miscellaneous filters. Select, let me do this. Select the category, select the call center. And let's forget category. So call center and region. Notice I'm allowing the user to select between two filters, right? Finish. Edit. Now, does it make sense to have a filter here? Let's run it and see what happens. Okay, select the call center. Now it's going to prompt us on the call center. Nothing shows up, really, because the prompt is returning a filter. The filter doesn't get displayed on the report. So naturally, I just wanted to show you that for kicks. So where do we put the filter? We need to put it up here, okay? So let's take this off and put our filter up here. This will make more sense now because our list is a list of prompts. Okay, I actually need to reprompt. So let's select the call center and finish. These are the call centers. Month, we need to add something to our template to display that. Let's do employee. Add to rows. And there we go. Oops. Didn't like that. So let's edit it. So employee and call center don't mix. Let's do something like region. Add to rows. Notice that error was a result of my ignorance of the data, not the design. Okay, so there's the region filtered by the call center that we selected. Here we go. So let's say I don't want to do call center. I can return it. Return, and I want to do by region. Okay, which regions do I want? Let's say all of them. And there we go. We'll see the regions. So here, what we're doing is allowing the user at runtime to choose between two prompts, whether they want to filter by region or by call center. Okay, so it's just the way you choose to do it makes a difference in what gets displayed. So if we chose a region, we'll see region in the where clause. If we chose call center, we'll see the same exact SQL, but we'll see call center here and the list of call centers that you chose. Okay, and let me close this quickly. And running out of time, but I'm going to show you two things. Value prompt is the simplest prompt. It just allows you to say what type of data do you want me to prompt on. So let's do something like numeric, number, and you can put a default. So the value, and now here's the thing about these. This one makes no sense to put it whether on the template of a report or in the filter section, because what are you saying? You're saying you're asking the user to enter a number, but then what does MicroStrategy do with that number is still undefined. The only time you want to use these is if you want to embed them, okay? Embed them in a filter, okay? So you create a filter, and whichever one you choose, let's say attribute, let's do year, and you want to go by ID, and notice here, just go here and select custom and drag your, okay, I need more space on my screen. Alright, so I'll drag this here. Notice, here's my filter. So now the year will be filtered by whatever number you enter, but this prompt by itself, embedding it, placing it on a report makes no sense. So the reason you're asking, so why do I need to do it? Well, it's simple. If you want to create your own prompt here, you can. you can create your own prompt here. But sometimes developers, or actually it's recommended that you're consistent, so you reuse your same prompt over and over. So you create the prompt and you start embedding it in your different filters, such that when you change the language or you change the properties of that prompt, it changes everywhere rather than having manually to do it in each different filter. Okay, and the last prompt I want to touch upon is the level. If you're familiar with metrics, you'll know what I'm talking about here. You want to create a level. Here you want to choose what level does your metric get calculated, at what level basically does it get calculated. So let's say you do something like in the attributes in time, let's say you do year and month. Okay, and you have revenue. So I'm not going to actually go and build this in detail, but let's say you have these two choices. Okay, and if you want to create the revenue metric, what you're doing here is saying, okay, I'm going to create the revenue. Here we go, revenue. But in the level, I could either standardize it or add it statically here, so I can fix it, or I can actually have the user at runtime decide the level. This is rarely used, I must say, rarely used, but just in case, I wanted to cover my bases here. What you do here is you add the level. So here was the level that we just created. Okay, and it didn't let me add it by dragging it. So when it doesn't, just browse to it. Okay, notice what happened here. I wasn't able to drag this in, nor did it let me set it internally. It's only accepting object filters, okay, like the list of objects to choose the level. Let me see if I can do it here. There we go. So actually, instead of dragging it in the condition, you drag it into the level area. So I made that first error, I was trying to drag it into the condition, but that's for filtering, not by choosing the level. But if at the level, let me reset this. Instead of, I could either add levels for my metric, or I can drag this into the level. And what happens is, at runtime, when you're running the report that embeds this new metric, instead of defaulting the level to the template or to the static level that you design, it'll actually ask the user to decide which level. So for revenue, if they choose year, it'll roll up the revenue for year. If they choose month, it'll roll it up for month. So this can come in handy when at runtime the user wants to decide what level their report is returning data at. It's very rarely used because the confusion is that can result from this is, as you would imagine, would be high. Users would be confused because they run a report, they choose the year level, and some metrics may not run, some metrics may not be able to aggregate at the year level, so you start having errors or unexpected results. Okay, so you don't see this very often, but if you're wondering how to use it, this is how you're using it, by embedding it in the level of a metric that you're defining. Okay, I will dedicate another session for how to embed prompts into filters, because that can be very complicated, as you would imagine. All right, talk to you later. Bye.